Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 835. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
AKA Negative Camber. Hey, you know why I've asked you here? We always review a Grand Prix race. You know how we do this.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's exactly what we do on a race weekend. But before doing that, I have to introduce my co-host. You know what that means.
Ripped from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
It's Paul. How you doing, Paul?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
It's
You sound
Paul
like
Charles,
Ted
the
Kravitz
International.
there. Hello, everybody. It is Paul Charles, the International.
Yes.
All right, Paul. So big activity. The 6 hours of Spa divided
12
by
hours.
12 hours divided by 2 days. Two races. How did you do?
We won again. So boring.
You're like Red
tired
Bull.
of the winning.
I'm so bored. Yeah, you just win everything. They need to change the DRS zones on you guys. They need to stop you from winning. We can't possibly handle another year of Red Bull winning.
Yeah. No, it's good. I wasn't in Spa, sadly, but
yeah, but your boy Ian was.
Ian was, and Gray and Roman were driving,
Yeah.
and they were driving the only Mercedes we have in our repertoire, because it just fits that series. So the 12-hour of Spa, they do 6 hours one day, 6 hours the other. They've got some different classes, and so we won our class, but got third overall on the podium, and we're leading most of the race, quite honestly. But the way the series runs, they have these things called code 60s instead of safety cars, and a pit stop in this series is a long time, and they've got very slow pit lane speeds. They've got you can only change tires and drivers, and then you have to go down to a refueling station, which is a lot slower refueling than normally in GT racing. So a pit stop costs you a lot of time, and if you can do your pit stop under these code 60s, which is where everyone slows down to 60 kilometers an hour, you can make up laps. So they got a lap down, unfortunately, because they got called out by one of those, but otherwise they would have been right in the hunt. So, but on the podium, winning class, that's 2 wins in a row for them. Sadly, we're not going to be able to compete in that series anymore because, well, not very sadly, actually, we're going to Le Mans. So that's kind of a nice point to it. So so we've got a lot of stuff coming up. Got Laguna this weekend.
Yeah.
So everyone tune into that. That's live on NBC, so that should be fun. Gotta love driving around Laguna. And then the week after that, we're going to Coda with the SRO team, and then it's Le Mans. So it's going to be quite a 4 weeks. We want the winning to keep continuing. I'm not telling
you do.
I am definitely not bored with winning. It's not a thing to be bored with. So it's crazy though. If you come second nowadays, it sounds bad, but come second nowadays, like, oh, okay. Well, so second is good. That's good. But man, winning is contagious and infectious. You just want that again and again.
Well, the best time to win something is right after you've won something.
And just keep that ball rolling for the rest of the season. That'd be good. Yeah.
Keep going. That's cool.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, hey, you managed to squeeze in the epic Miami Grand Prix this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And all of its glory and hype and excitement down in Miami, your old stomping ground.
Yes, sir.
Pretty exciting. So let's talk about this race. Let's start off with the formation lap. Let me just get some of the big rocks out of the way. Up front, I will admit that the event actually looked better organized this year. You know, that first year, even for Austin, was a little, and expect this for Vegas too. There's going to be hiccups and things that don't quite seem right and a little wonky, and that's okay. You know, it's the first year. But this year, they really did look like they went to read the tombstones from last year, or the epitaphs, and went in and tried to solve for some of those issues. So kudos to the organizers. It looked more organized. They had that improved paddock layout. Depending.
Now you know who helps with the whole kit and caboodle over there in Miami.
No.
Is Timo, who used to be our crew chief down at Sim Raceway. So now, and he also used to work for Sauber, and he was, obviously part of the pit stop team, and just he was a day-to-day guy at Sauber. Came to us, and then they hired him to actually help with the logistics of putting everything together and how F1 teams work and what they need and all that kind of stuff. Because I bumped into him at Daytona this year, and he was telling me all about,
Yeah.
now they're putting all the hospitality inside the stadium. The teams are squawking about this and they squawk about that. But ultimately, he knows what a team needs and wants, and so so it's a full-time job for him for that
Wow.
one weekend. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, not an easy job.
No, not an easy job. As he
No.
says, he's gets it from both sides, right? So he's
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
put the event on the way the organizers want to put it on, and then he's got the team squawking about this and that as well. So yeah,
Right,
bunch of
right.
whiners. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Well, yeah, I think it was much improved. The paddock layout. They had added more seating, reprofiled the corner, which is good. Resurfaced the track. Other amenities and activities like cornhole and what else
Swimming
did I
pools.
see? Swimming pools, actual water there, which was good.
That's
And
nice.
yeah, so more power to them. One concern though I have, and this isn't directed at Miami per se, is really the price.
Hmm.
I saw videos of fans at the merch stands, and the prices were nothing short of branded robbery. I mean, it was astounding the prices they're charging for just
Yeah.
hats, like
Right.
a McLaren hat or
Yeah.
Williams t-shirt or whatever. It was astounding. And then if the merch wasn't bad enough, the tickets must be made from pure unobtainium due to the galactic prices of
Hmm.
these tickets. I used to be able to get a general admission ticket for the weekend for $100 in Austin.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And they were
now
happy to have you.
and they were happy to have you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Bobby was like, "Come on down,"
Yeah.
and they were happy to have you. And for $100, you know, look, okay, so Austin was trying to get its sea legs and
Hmm.
and establish a an audience. I get it. Maybe they were running those GA tickets a little low to draw people in. That's fair enough. But now it is thousands of dollars
Hmm.
for those tickets or good seats, and that's pretty astounding. I mean, it makes
Yeah.
it really unapproachable for fans to go. It's very, very expensive. And so I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so it's Formula One. They're capitalizing on the explosive growth. The merch is super price, price super high. Tickets are out of control high.
Hmm.
They reckon this is a premier event that people are going to pay big money. Now, if you want to treat F1 as the pinnacle of motorsport, you want to charge $60 for a t-shirt and 2 grand for seats. That's one thing. But then why would you put on a pre-race ceremony like that? I have no idea what was going on there. And then
Yeah.
to be topped off, you have security guards frog stomping an 83-year-old knighted 3-time world champion in the VIP area, protecting who? Who are they protecting from Sir Jackie Stewart? Will I Am? Are you kidding me? LL Cool J? I mean, you gotta, oh boy, they're so A-list. You can't let the riffraff and the hoi polloi in here. He's a 3-time world champ for
Yeah.
crying out loud. And then they collar him trying to get over there. I thought this just reminds me. Remember that headline we joked about a few years ago, where they had, I don't know if it was the Sun or somebody had a picture of a garage area, and Lewis was talking to Nicky Lauda, and the headline was like, Lewis, talks to elderly F1 fan. It reminded me of that. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh,
Yeah. It's more
just
prevalent every time, isn't it? The
yeah,
more it's attracting the VIP superstars or whatever, the less, you know, real fans, then this is going to happen. They're there for the event. They don't actually know the history, or maybe don't even
yeah,
care what the position. It's just, I mean, we've talked about it before, that it's a very dangerous position to be. It's like you're making all this money while you can, but
yep,
then it's very short-sighted. I mean, even going to a hockey game is expensive, right? So if you buy a ticket and you can buy you and your wife or your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, and then you got kids and you're like, yeah, I'm sorry, kids, you're gonna have to stay with grandma today because we're going to the F1 race. When I was a kid, be like,
yeah,
come on, Paul, we're going to the F1 race. Yeah,
yeah.
let's go. right?
Yeah.
You're deleting out future fans,
Yeah.
and they're the kids that are, honestly, that's when I was a kid, that young 8-year-old, watching the cars, I was entrenched from the rest of my life,
Right.
not from watching a TV show, right? Which can and
Right.
I just think they're eliminating a lot of depth and future fandom, and it's short-sighted. I don't think it's fair. I don't think they should look at it that way, and it's going to be to their detriment in the long term, I think. Right? You
Yeah.
need to give everyone a chance to get in there and watch the cars go around, watch the event. It's a great thing to see, seeing the best drivers in the world driving the fastest cars in the world is a great thing to see. But if you deny them that and just allow them to watch it on TV all the time, eventually they're going to go to somewhere that they can actually feel a part of, rather than just a
Yeah.
spectator of.
Like an IndyCar race or IMSA.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you can come in, you touch the car, someone will say hi, you put a little kid in the car. It's like, that's, we're all fans of our own sport. And so if we can bring someone in and make them even more enthusiastic or light their eyes up, and it's why we're there,
Yeah.
And I think the F1 drivers obviously miss out on that. They're just steeped in all this PR and press and all this kind of stuff. So they miss that fun side of the racing side, which is when you see Formula One drivers come to IndyCar. It's like a breath of fresh air for them, really.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. They all say that. And the whole pre-race thing, a lot of the drivers didn't like it at all.
No.
George Russell didn't like it. Um, a lot of people didn't like it. I wrote a editorial piece on the website talking about that. And Lewis liked it and he enjoyed it, and that was great. But from my standpoint, you got drivers standing out there in hot race suits for 30 minutes, which is brutal.
It is tough, and we do that on other races. We with our people, but you try to minimize that, especially that close to the start of the race. You don't want their head in any other space other than focus on the start of the race, and
Yeah.
that whole thing was way too close to the start of the race, which is what put them off. I mean, I think they did the drive around, wave to the fans thing and all that earlier,
Do one or
right?
the other, yeah. Right.
Yeah, do one or the other, and
Right.
do it like 2 hours before the guys start, so the fans get to see you.
Yeah.
They get the introduction, but then they can really focus on their job at hand, which is a very intense mental job to be ready. So I think that's why it's not that they don't like waving to the fans or whatever, and might make them a little uncomfortable because it's not their thing. But I think the thing that irks them the most is their preparation for the race.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of feel like Miami should have learned from Austin when they did the whole Michael Buffer, introduction, and did that one year and didn't do it again. It's like lessons learned. Yeah, I don't know. It was, for me, it was way too long, cringy, tedious. It was painful for me to watch. I don't know. And then I don't know. Somehow, like last year, I just come away with this feeling like there's a greasy film on me. And I suspect Vegas is going to be even worse on the whole, pomp and presentation side of this
Hey,
thing.
if there isn't anyone being helicoptered in,
Yeah.
I don't know when it's not going to happen.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. But hey, guess who was there?
Help me, Tom Cruise!
So you got that.
Yeah, just don't talk to him.
Yeah, right. Can't talk to him. Can't talk to everybody. See, I kind of go, I see a lot of fans posting this. If you're a celebrity and you're loud on the grid, you're fair game.
Absolutely.
You're not talking to this. I can't talk to the Williams sister. I've been around a hell of a lot of A-list, B-list, stars in my day.
Mm-hmm.
And none of that makes me go crazy, or to me, respect the hell out of what they achieve. But, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't get that buzzed by it, but, that's unfortunate. So all of that expense, those are my just talking points coming out of this weekend. I felt like the race was improved for sure. Don't know that the track, I think the reprofiling of that corner specifically helped a little bit. If I'm Red Bull, I'm throwing a red flag, because this whole thing of neutering DRS zones now
Mm-hmm.
because of the strength of Red Bulls is a bit BS. I'm sorry. I mean, that's just blatantly obvious. They're trying to neuter Red Bull at this point.
Yeah.
Nobody
I'm
did that. in the past.
Yeah, maybe
Have they
not.
adjusted DRS zones in the past? Sure, of course they have. But they're doing a lot of it now. And then that, coupled with the fact that they raise the cars, they're more disturbed by air, they're harder to
Hmm.
follow, passing is more limited because of it, and then you reduce DRS zones. You got a lot of drivers talking about that too, so it's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't want any DRS zones, so if they're
No.
shorter, honestly I don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if the sport has been notorious for trying to, pull back the team that's dominated, right? So if that's what
Yeah.
they're trying to do, I guess that's what it's
Well,
trying to do.
except for Mercedes. They
But
didn't do a whole lot with Mercedes. Well, they did, with
they
the
did in the
Frick and
end. Yeah,
Das and stuff like
yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah.
hmm
Yeah, I think so.
But
Eventually somebody said, okay, 8 years is enough.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't really care about it. But I think, Red Bull have come up with a revolutionary system to work with the DRS system, which we don't like, but they have, and I think they should make hay while the sun shines.
I
Let them
do
go.
too.
Let everyone figure out what the hell they did.
Let everybody figure it out. It's what drives
Yeah,
innovation.
yeah. But that certainly looks like it's going to be I think I know what my picks are going to be for the rest of the year in our GP
Yeah.
game. I'm not sure I'm going to divert away from that like I used to try and
Yeah.
grab the sensational win of the
Yeah.
weekend. I think yeah,
Right.
lock in.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the race. Not trying to beat up on you, Miami. Well done. Enjoyed the race. Not an issue. Just getting a little pricey.
Yeah, I
Pricey.
mean, yeah, yes. Was it the top three of the US? All three US races are in the top 5 most expensive races
Yeah.
in the world for the F1 Championship.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of that.
Yeah. No, I'm not either. Not happy about that. That's not a record I'm proud we carry. Let's talk about the race and how they finished. We're going to start off at the very top at Red Bull. You had Sergio Perez. You bet we have Sergio Perez.
You like my bass? You like it?
I did on Saturday. Sergio's P2, Max Verstappen P1. Sergio Perez started on the medium tire, Paul, as did all of those around him. And it seemed like the right call according to the team's race strategy simulations. But with heavy fuel load and hot weather, Sergio said he had a tough first stint. He said it was really kind of mediocre, really struggled on the tires. He said, and this is what Sergio said, to start on the hards, though, would have been a real gamble for them to start him on the hards. Now, take that for what it was. I read that directly from the quote from Sergio after the race. Sergio took the lead when Max finally boxed for medium tires, but then lost out to the Dutchman in the waning laps. Max had much fresher tires compared to Sergio's hard tires. Lost the lead, finished in P2. Said he was really surprised how fast Max was. He, made the obligatory. We're going to have to look at that. We're going to look at the data a little bit. I don't know why Max was so darn fast
Yeah.
on those hard tires and I wasn't, and those kind of things. For me, Paul, Christian kind of explained it. Look, hindsight's 2020. Yeah, maybe we should have started Sergio on hards, but he was on pole, and everyone around him's on mediums.
hmm
Had we started on hards, there's every chance that he may have gotten jumped by 2 or 3 cars. We'd have been stuck behind that for the first two or three laps or whatever it might have been. It'd been hard to get back by. You don't know. But the fact of the matter is they were trying to maximize his strategy. You could argue whether that was the right strategy or not, but I would say the majority of the grid thought medium hard was the right strategy, and that's what they all ran. It was the ones further back that chose to gamble a little bit on that hard, and in return, one wonders if Red Bull knew by the practice sessions how those mediums were going to fare on heavy fuel loads versus and hot weathers on this tarmac. I don't know. It's easy to sit in an armchair and think that they screwed Sergio on a strategy, but I don't know that that's necessarily the case.
Yeah, Ed, you're right. I mean, you can look at it on paper before the race, and you say, okay, that makes sense. This makes sense. You say, oh, you're starting to hard. You could fall back to third place at the start. Max, should be able to jump a few people. He's going to be 2 cars away from you before lap 4, right? But that also they do have the technology to understand how hot it is, and I don't think they have to call what tire they're going to use till basically they untake the covers off, right? I don't know when they have to declare what tire they're going to start on. But with there being a 9-car gap, you can also look at the other way. Well, if I match Max's strategy on tire, then I should have an advantage no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Because I've got that bigger gap, that bigger cushion between them. So I can see them going back and forth on both those strategies, really. So I don't blame Red Bull. I don't think it was done on purpose to help Max, make an easy go of it. But they do have to remember they've got a car that just is sensational in the DRS straightaway zone. So they can dispatch cars pretty quick, even if they do get a jump on them.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you're on Sergio's side of the garage, you're thinking we've got to start on mediums. We can't get jumped at the beginning because that's going to be strategy over. So let's start on the mediums. Let's run them out, see how well it goes.
Clean air. Yeah.
Clean air. And let's see if he can claw out enough of a gain at that point to protect. And as it turns out, technically he did. There was 1.5 seconds between him and Max by the time Max came out of the pit. Just Max on much fresher tires. And I will get into when I start talking about Max here that there's another factor there I think that played that. But I don't Sergio can be a little torqued about it, and I understand that. I'm sure he wants to sit down and look at the data, and I'm sure the team will. But it's easy to second guess after you see the results and second guess that. But I got to be honest with you, if I was looking at it, it kind of makes sense to me.
Well, I think he didn't have a great weekend up until qualifying anyway,
right.
and he was flattered with his qualifying position because Max didn't put a lap in.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
Yeah, he got pole, and he was faster than everybody else. But was he technically faster than Max? Probably not.
I don't think he was faster than Max all weekend. And I know the commentators on Sky, Paul, kept talking about how in recent races, if Sergio's been leading, he's been able to hold that pace against Max, where in the past Max would close and pass him. And so they were kind of bigging Sergio up, saying, "Hey, now you're able to stay right there."
Yeah.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. I think the last couple of races have sort of suggested that.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. But I think Max was clearly the fastest guy on track all weekend long.
Yeah, he had it in hand. He had it in hand. And I think, ultimately you would think Sergio on mediums versus Alonso on mediums, he should have pulled out like a 10-second gap.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, he wasn't working with the car. The car wasn't quite right for him. He wasn't able to put the pace down that I think if Max had started in that position, I'm pretty sure Max would have put a pretty good gap on Alonso. So I think it was more a matter of Sergio struggling this weekend with the car versus Max, but the car still, but obviously not struggling against all the other competition.
I think that's it. I think you're spot on there. Speaking of Max, he started on the hards. That was, as it turned out for Red Bull, that was the better option as they could manage the wear rate and the heavy fuel load with those hards. He wasn't at risk of being swamped by all those around him, like Sergio was at the sharp end of the grid. Max had a terrific first stint, Paul, but this is what really is a bigger game changer here, that we're tending to lay the blame all on the strategy. But I think we're forgetting or maybe missing a point of just how stellar Max was on that first stint on those hards and being able to side through that. That was a key to his making his strategy work, along with the fact that he had to dispatch all those cars in front of him super quick. He could not let Sergio drag out 10 seconds, 15 seconds on the leaders. He had to get up there, and he had to get up there quick. And he did. So, a lot of this is really the execution of that hard medium strategy that Max pulled off with aplomb. And I think that is a large part of why that strategy worked for him. When you take others that ran that hard medium compound and didn't have that much success with that strategy as the quote preferred strategy.
I mean, that strategy was also, Yeah. Okay. Finish.
Well, I was just going to say he got around him, executed it perfectly. He was 1.5 seconds behind Sergio when he came out. If Sergio was struggling on those mediums with graining, hot tarmac, those kind of things, possibly fuel load, then you could see by running to basically 10 laps left, Max wasn't going to be on those mediums long enough to create a problem for him. Came out with just a handful of laps left, 1.5 seconds, much fresher tires than Sergio's hard, made that pass for the win, and took it there. But anyway, go ahead and say what you're going to say.
Yeah. And another thing on the strategy, and I think we texted a bit about it during the race, was that if you go with the hard medium strategy, you're kind of in the danger zone, as Calvin Fisher always likes to say, in case there's a safety car
Yes.
or a virtual safety car, because if it happens in the first third of the race, then the medium runners come in, put on hards, they can finish the race.
Max was
But
toast.
if Max would have been toast if there was any kind of safety car. So they were really rolling dice a little bit there. It paid off because there was no safety car. Every car
Yep.
finished. But if there had been a safety car anywhere earlier than the first half of the race, he would have been a two stopper, and that would have put him out of contention. I think he would have finished second. Sergio would have won, but
Yep.
it was probably a more dangerous strategy, but it was the only one they had to go with. They weren't going to lose by doing it, but Sergio could have won if
Yes.
the safety, right? So
Yeah,
the worst position was second, but because
and really, that's not unheard of. I mean, it's a street circuit, so I actually in our fantasy picks, I had one safety car. You know, I
Me
kind
too.
of guessed that there'd be one safety car during the session. You know, hard to get those cars off. And kudos to the drivers, nobody stuffed it in the wall. And so, in that sense, I think even during Sky Sports commentary said some of them were doing some lift and coasting because some of the teams were banking on a safety car.
Right.
So for Max and Red Bull, for Hanan team, that was a serious risky a gamble by the hard medium compound, really.
Yep.
But a great result. I thought it was a fantastic drive from Max back up to front. You know, good drive for Sergio too. Great team result. Max got fastest lap. Let's talk about Aston Martin. You had Lance Stroll down in P12, Fernando Alonso in P3. Fernando had a good start, was hanging in there with Perez early on. Perez wasn't, as you mentioned, Paul, he wasn't walking away from him. I kind of thought he would. So I thought that bode well for Fernando, just to at least hang in that same zip code, make sure he didn't get chalked, and then that was going to really kind of lend itself to sniffing a podium for sure. And so within that, he was in striking range of a podium for most of the day. Wasn't able to hold Max off clearly behind him, who was flying on his hard compounds. But after Max got around him, Fernando really at that point was a pretty lonely race, coming home quite a drift of the Red Bulls, but securely on that podium, beating the Ferraris and the Mercedes. A great result, his fourth podium out of 5 races, Paul.
Yeah, isn't that crazy to think?
Yeah.
Still, I'm excited. I love seeing him race. You know,
Yeah.
it's for us old guys. It's good to see that he hasn't lost any speed at all,
Yeah.
and he's got so much knowledge in his head, and with the working with the tires and knowing what to do and judging what other people are doing. He was more than happy to sit there behind Sergio, and he's just waiting for something to happen to a Red Bull and move him up the grid.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen. So I think every race he can be in the top 3. He sees an op. It could eventually turn into a win. So yeah, kudos to Aston Martin. They've done a fantastic job with the car design, and Alonso is a different Alonso this year. Not just because we thought it was going to be fireworks. Aston, he wasn't going to blend in well. It was just going to be a disaster. He's going to want to get out. They'll be shouting and screaming. Completely wrong, right?
Right.
The car, a good car really helps a good attitude, of course.
Yeah.
Right. But it's also funny to hear when Alonso starts talking about, oh, how's Lance doing? Is he feeling all right? Yeah, nice pass, Lance. Yeah, pass it along for me.
Right.
Send him this emoji. I'll send it to you on the steering wheel here. Yeah. Funny.
Right. It is funny. Yeah, it's a kinder, gentler Alonso.
He knows this is a massive opportunity. He's not going to do anything and jeopardize it at this point.
Yeah, agreed. Speaking of Lance, his issues really started on Saturday, Paul, with the poor qualifying result. and then he left him with a heck of a lot of work to make up from where he started on Sunday. But he got stuck in a DRS train, couldn't get into the points, languished back there in P12, which is unfortunate for him.
Yep. Yep. You would have thought he could have done more considering the pace of
Yeah.
the Aston Martin in Alonso's hands anyway. But
Yeah.
once you're stuck, it seems.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about Mercedes.
Get down.
Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, P6, George Russell in P4. Lewis had a tough start, and much like Max during quali, he kind of got hung out. So that left him starting well down to the grid in P13. So he was always going to have a lot of work to do from there. Not happy about that. The good news is, even though he had a little bit of a touch at the very beginning with the car, he thought did some damage. The good news is, though, he ran a long stint on his first stint, and he had much better pace with the medium tires than he was on the hards. And this actually allowed him then really to kind of pour the coals to it and start attacking, which he did. And he dragged the car up to P6. So, it's not winning, and we get it. And Toto was sort of, it is what it is. But I thought Lewis kind of turned it around and had a pretty good result.
I thought he had a really good result actually. Sometimes it's not doing something that pays you dividends in the end. He's very measured in his driving. He doesn't panic. And I've seen this a few times when he's been mired a bit far back, but he's not making desperate moves to dive inside people. He knows that he needs to protect the tire, and so he'll run around for 10 laps or so before he starts attacking to maximize the pace of the tire later on in its stint. And that's exactly what he did. As you say, made it last longer than everyone else did, then jumped on the tire and got the most out of it, and jumped a lot of people. So I was actually really impressed with his complete race there, even though it may not have looked fantastic on screen. He actually did a lot of tough work back there to protect the tire and get the most out of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I came out of that race thinking Lewis really had a great race. And if you asked him, I'm sure it's not where he wants to be, but given the hand he was dealt, I think he turned it around. Also, equally a good race, George had a good race, had a good pass on Ocon and Carlos Sainz to take a much-needed fourth place. And while it seemed like, Paul, that Mercedes in aggregate was having a very challenging Friday and Saturday, and I thought, oh, man, this is not looking like a track that's going to flatter this car. They actually did better on Sunday than I thought they were going to do. They scored some good points, 4th and 6th. Yes, you could get a little down that you're not winning after winning for 8 years straight. But the reality of it is, I think both those drivers dragged their cars by the scruff of their neck around there, put in a really good performance. Russell had a great performance on Sunday.
He did. They're going to be very happy about being ahead of Ferrari, of course. And so that's a big bonus for them. But yeah, they put a good thing together. I think I picked him actually to be on the podium because last year this was kind of like an unexpected rate track for them to show pace, and I think Russell came 4th last year actually. Maybe. I thought they'd do quite well here. Maybe it didn't show in the practices, but I thought they would. And as we're still, as far as we know, they're still rolling along with this car while they're trying to develop a radically changed car. So they're banging in the points, which is what Russell did all last year, and now Lewis is doing it too. But it's going to really help them in that run to possibly be able to finish at least second in the constructors. I think that's going to be quite a fight, and it's going to be to and fro as the season goes on that.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's talk about Ferrari. You had Charles Leclerc in P7, Carlos Sainz. Yes, that Carlos Sainz.
No, it cannot be, Ricky.
No, Ricky, it cannot be. In P5. Charles had a ragged weekend with 2 crashes, one on Friday, one on during qualifying, Q3. Most of the drivers all got their banker lap in. Max had a bad banker lap. And then on their final runs in quali, Charles put it in the wall, and that was the end of quali. So that's why Lewis and Max started so far down. In the race, though, he said he was bottoming out on certain parts of that track during the race, couldn't make progress forward. And even when he passed a car like a Haas, Paul, he was immediately repassed by
Yeah,
a Haas. It was just
a few
not,
times.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just not a good day for Charles. The crashes, Paul, and we haven't talked about this, but the crashes prompted Martin Brundle and Sky to suggest, you and I have talked about in the past that after 5, 6 years in this sport,
Hmm.
as a Ferrari fan, I'm a little concerned about the continuing unforced errors that Charles has been having. And you and I have talked about that. It was interesting. Martin pretty much is on that same page. And he said and suggested that to him, it just seems like Charles seems to be struggling with knowing or feeling where the limit is in his car.
Yeah.
And you know, I've like I said, I've shared my concern about unforced errors that he's still having. He's been in this series driving an anchor for 5 years, and it made me think, Paul. You and I were texting about it, and I thought, you know, it's an interesting comment from Martin because it does seem like you could argue, and we have in the past about these unforced errors, that
Hmm.
he's just going over the limit. He's trying to get more out of that car than what it can do, and you know that's what you do when you're trying to make something happen. And a lot of people would say it's a noble charter. It's, you know, you got to love a guy who's going 11 tenths and he's trying to make something happen and to be respected. And I get all that, except when you're bringing the car back in pieces numerous times, that gets super expensive to be, oh, go for it at 11 tenths, right? Lewis worked through that point. A lot of people say, well, Max did the same thing when he was, you know, yeah, he did, but he doesn't anymore, right?
Hmm.
And Max took him about 5 years to kind of get out of the, as Mark Webber would say, first lap nutter kind of thing. But here we still have Charles doing this. And I texted you, I said, what do you think about that comment from Martin about just being a driver that can't feel where the limit of his car is? And what drivers in the past can you and I think of
Hmm.
that may be the case? And you texted back, you said the first that comes to mind is Gilles Villeneuve.
Yeah. Yeah. Which who was, you know, the darling of Ferrari and was
Yes.
an amazing driver, but um, he also had a lot of unforced errors because he didn't know the boundary. You know, maybe he wasn't an Alan Prost. You know, he would go above and beyond, and sometimes going above and beyond causes chaos and mayhem and damage.
Yeah.
You know, it was
Right.
great to see his driving skill, and some drivers with a lot of skill relied on it a bit too much to the detriment of winning world championships and race wins, really. Um, so it's hard to say what the reason is, but for me, I've driven obviously a lot of cars on a lot of racetracks, and I would take a car that you have a great feel for and a little less lap time than a car that you can't feel where it is, and but the car is maybe a little faster when you get it all right,
Mm-hmm.
because that leads to inconsistency. Um, and perhaps there's something in the Ferrari. Yeah, I think there's definitely something in Charles too, because there's no way Ferrari have built cars that have no feeling in them year after year after year. And I think there's a lot to the fact that Charles has the weight of Ferrari on his shoulders and he's trying to make something happen that didn't happen. But maybe
Yeah.
there's something in this car that also isn't given the feedback that they want. We've talked to Lewis has complained about feedback on the car and feel of his car right now that he's struggling with.
Right.
And you look at the pace of Charles versus Carlos, which I think is bigger than maybe it was at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
because maybe Carlos isn't willing to go beyond that point where you can't feel where the car is going to go next. And yet Charles feels like the pressure is on to make it happen, and he wants to win a world championship. That's the only thing Charles needs to do right now for Ferrari. And so I think it's accumulation of all these things. I think there's something in the car. I think there's something in Charles. How you fix that, really tough. I don't know, as I've seen many people actually come back from their natural instinctive driving, um, but it can happen. As you said, Lewis, for sure, we jumped on him years ago for, why did he do this? He didn't have to do it. Yeah, there's times when you win them and times when you just play the cards that are dealt with you. But if you start to force it, then you lose way more than you could have gained. And so, yeah, I can't psychoanalyze Charles. He's an amazing driver, I think. I just think he's still trying to pull more out of that car than is possible. His errors seem to always be as solo.
Yeah.
In qualifying, whatever. When he's really, really trying to maximize everything, I think in the races his history is a bit less clouded.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the things I liked about watching with Lewis, is, apologies for my dog barking, that apparently is going to be the soundtrack for this podcast. But one of the things I liked about Lewis was after he got through that initial, cut your teeth, get your sea legs sort of thing that all of the drivers go through the first year, 2, 3. But it was always watching Lewis on Fridays. And yet again, let's do away with Friday practice, all of them, But this is what I liked about Friday practices, is watching Lewis at each track. And I used to see this from other drivers like Senna and Schumacher, Vettel to some point, but not maybe as much as Lewis. A lot of times on Fridays, you watch Lewis, oh, he went wide there. Oh, he went wide at that corner there. And he would seem to be running off a little bit in certain areas. And you think, boy, it looks a little ragged on Friday. But it took me a little bit to figure out that what Lewis was doing is finding the limits.
Yeah.
He's finding the absolute limits of the car and the track. And the good thing is they had a Mercedes that was so dominant and so sure-footed that there wasn't a lot of variation within that car. It was really just track-related specific performance with that car, which was great out of the box. And then how far can I push it at turn 4? And so we would watch that, and he was finding those limits. And then when it got to Sunday, he didn't see any of that. He knew where the limits were.
Yeah, and as I said, and the car is a lot to do with that. If you're comfortable in the car, you can push the limit and know that it's not going to be, crashed into a million pieces. The car eases into its over limitness. Not a word actually, but you can feel it coming. Like, oh, okay, we'll bring it back, right? When if you're in a car that is a bit more on the edge, it's like, well, oh, chip, okay. Practice over. Sorry, guys. Right.
Yeah.
So the car really helps you be able to get to those limits, go beyond them with safety as well.
Yeah. I don't know. It's tough. Look, I'm a Ferrari fan. Everybody knows that. And it's really tough. I'm not trying to take the stuffing out of Charles. I think he's awesome.
Yeah, he is.
It's just this continuing, issue that I don't know if I have an answer to it. And Martin kind of put his finger on it. And, I trust, Martin knows what the hell he's talking about. He's a seasoned veteran himself. So, it have to be something that Charles got to take a look at. For Carlos's side, he looked okay actually on the opening stint, Paul and his mediums. I thought, he's going to be there or thereabouts. Whatever Charles wasn't delivering and wasn't able to deliver, I kind of feel like maybe this is Carlos's weekend. And then he tried to undercut Fernando. And you and I were texting back and forth. Were they leaving Fernando out too long, to cover the undercut, right? And you and I were wondering, if that was the right move. But he tried to undercut Fernando, and then when he came out, he said he had to push too hard on his hards to try to make it work, and that ultimately he felt that cost that position in the end. He couldn't do it. Ultimately, Ferrari did struggle with their tire wear and finding that very narrow window in that long run pace. It's this lingering issue that continues from last year into this year and still continues, Paul, and I don't know how they solve it.
Yeah, I don't know how they solve it. And I think also, once again, going back, it pays back to Alonso managing his tires and knowing when he had something left in those tires, when he had to use it. And that made it really difficult for Carlos to make that jump. Right. I thought, from what we saw from some of the people on the mediums, they were toast, they were done, they were dead tires. But for the smart drivers like Alonso and Hamilton, they made the most of that last little 20-30% of the medium tire to pick up the pace and jump everybody. And in Alonso's case, he was able to protect himself from Carlos, who had to, go above and beyond. But in the end, he got, you saw him charging in the pit lane, lighting up the tires. He knew it was game on.
Yeah, he did.
And Alonso just drove a better race and beat him on strategy and theory on how to save a tire. So
yeah, it
for
was.
Carlos.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
for
had that
Carlos.
5-second penalty. You're right, for speeding in pit lane. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it was a normal race for Carlos. I'm not getting super excited about it. I'm a little sad he's not really bringing it to Charles, but then Charles is making him look a little better with the mistakes.
Okay, let's do, Paul, this just in, breaking news. Crazy. My internet service provider just decided to just stop the service in the neighborhood, doing work in your neighborhood.
You didn't have your wife out there digging ditches, plants and stuff? No,
we always
not
call
today.
ahead if we're going to dig,
Yeah.
So 1-800 dig right or whatever, it's
Yeah.
crazy. So in abbreviated, if you guys recognize a little hiccup in the video and or audio, that's it. That's the reason.
I was thinking about changing my shirt and us not saying anything, but
it's a good idea.
You fixed it too quick.
Yeah, right. I did.
That's comedic genius right there.
I know. It would have been good. Just boom. All of a sudden you're wearing like a Williams shirt.
Yeah.
Been good. Oh my. Anyway, let's talk about Alpine. And it just reminded me, I'm going to have a lot of editing to do now that I have to splice videos together.
Yeah, that's not fun.
Yeah. Let's talk about Alpine, shall we? Pierre Gasly, P8, Esteban Ocon, P9. Alpine ran a split strategy with Gasly on mediums, Ocon on hards. This is going to be a tough strategy for both of them to execute. And as it turns out, it was. Gasly initially dropped down a few positions, but then he stopped early and then legitimately fought his way back into the points, battling with Ferraris and Mercedes all along the way. I thought he did a pretty good job, all things given. Conversely, Paul, Ocon went long, then dropped down. Yeah, very long. And then, he was running up in second place at one point, then dropped down the field when he boxed late, was able to also fight his way back into points or stay in the points. Look, on the balance of it, much better than Baku. But coming off of a report just before the race from the CEO, Laurent Rossi, who was pretty scathing about the team, very critical of the team, perhaps an 8th and 9th isn't that good after all.
No, maybe not. And he always seemed so cheerful and happy about his team, but all of a sudden, snap.
Yeah.
He's made 180 degrees and being very critical. So that's an interesting turn of events, I feel.
Is. Makes you wonder if the boardroom at Renault.
Right. It doesn't come, as they know, it rolls downhill, right? So, I'm sure they're not okay with just being, it's, Alpine again, 5th, 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever, they're paying a lot of money and they're putting a lot of effort into being a team that can win races. And this isn't showing anything like that, right? But I think Gasly did have a great run. I think, he was at the sharp end and, holding on for as long as he could. So, and Ocon, I think, kind of sneaked that one in there. Didn't expect him actually to get back in the points, but he made it work. So I think drivers did a pretty good job. Just the car isn't up to the job yet.
Yeah, agreed. Haas F1, Nico Hulkenberg down at P15, Kevin Magnussen P10. Kevin didn't get the best start, but he said that he was actually hoping to get a little bit more out of this race than a P10, having started in P4. So he was hoping maybe to do a little better, but still, it's hard to be mad at points. And he had some good battles actually with faster cars than him, including Leclerc's Ferrari, which I thought was a fun battle to watch. And the defensive driving and the repassing and everything else, he brought it home in P10. A good run by Kevin for sure.
Yeah, no, it was great. I really enjoyed his fight with Leclerc. We know he doesn't give up, neither does Hulkenberg actually, but Leclerc probably thought, oh, okay, I'm buying him now. Boom. Yeah. There's Magnussen, dive right back in and did it again. Yeah. Boom, there's Mags back again. I thought that was amazing and just full of spirit out there driving. I agree. You start P4, you expect to be at least a bit more than 1 point, but because he did fall back so quickly, he lost 3 positions right off the bat, and so all that he gained from that 4th position was lost at that point. So once it all ironed itself out after 3 or 4 laps, but when you saw him dicing with with Charles, you thought, well, maybe he might be in the hunt for, 7th or 8th, but in the end, the pace of the Haas, and it looked difficult to drive. They had a
Yeah, it
lot of
did.
moments in that thing coming off the corners, a lot of oversteer snaps. So I don't think it was easy, but it was a fairly quick car, but not an easy car to drive.
Yeah,
Uh,
agreed.
so I think that may have made him a bit more vulnerable coming out onto those turns into the DRS zones and able to get people to get a run on him.
Yeah, it's interesting. At Baku when they were talking about the DRS when not engaged, they had a rear wing that was working. It was also interesting. Nico ran a long first stint and was in the points, but then his stop dropped him down out of the top 10. And Nico said that he was pretty much stuck in traffic at that point. But being in that traffic for him anyway, it said it caused a lot of loss of downforce being in traffic. And then he said, when you lose that downforce,
I thought they fixed that.
yeah, they did last year, right?
Yeah,
They
it's
fixed
all
it.
fixed now. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but everybody, including Mercedes, was porpoising, so we got to raise the cars, and now it doesn't work. So in one single move to stop cars from porpoising, they've undid everything Ross Brawn worked hard on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, do you want to hit on that a little bit more in depth? Is that obviously the lower the car, a lot of downforce comes from the underside. That was the whole presence of the car, the idea of the thing, that all the percentage of downforce were predominantly from underneath the car, but they raised the car, then the downforce is percentages are spread more on top. So therefore you're back into the whole dirty air.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He said that, and with the lack of downforce, it increases his tire degradation. So he's pretty much stuck.
Makes sense. Yeah,
it does. So, this is one of those things that I'm always ranting about, F1 and all its pragmatism should have just told cars to fix their aero and left them where they were, right? Then fix your effing car. Anyway, AlphaTauri, Nick DeVries, P18, Yuki Tsunoda, P11. Nick bumped into the back of Lando Norris at the start, was still able to continue, so it didn't have too much damage. He said it did cause vibrations on his front right, and that impacted his pace on the first stint. He said when he got out of DRS range, though, he said he just lost so much time down the straights that it was almost impossible to make any real progress back up through the field when he was out of DRS range. He was just losing way too much pace, which is interesting. He ended up in P18, which is better than the first 4 races this season. So
yikes.
You can guff haw at P18, but at least he came home in P18.
Still might go for it that. I don't go for it. I don't laugh at him. I think it's disappointing. I'm sure he's disappointed. I'm sure the team's disappointed, and it's unexpected, right? So
he's got to get on top of that.
Yeah, I really think he's going to be better once he gets to the European races, but I've been wrong before, evidently.
Yeah, right. But is Franz Toast going to be happy with it? Otherwise, I think you're going to start to hear Helmut Marko.
Goodbye, good luck, and good riddance.
There you go.
Yes. Well, he's already said that to Toast anyway, so
yeah, he did. Right.
Whatever.
Right. Yeah. Right. Let's see, for Yuki, he was hunting down that familiar P10 spot he loves so much, but lost out by a second or two. He had a good run on the mediums late in the race, managed to get by the seasoned, grizzled veteran that is Valtteri Bottas in P11. So there you go. Put the move on Valtteri.
Valtteri looks a little rough nowadays, doesn't he?
Yeah, it kind of does.
I don't know what he's trying to do there.
I don't know what he's doing there. Is he? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what he's going for, but it's
I don't know. Whatever, you do you. But wow, how about that? You see Lewis's outfits this weekend?
I tried not to.
It was like 89 degrees out there. First he looked like a dog trainer of Belgian Malinois, with the dog training suit, and then I don't know what's going on there, man. You need to
it's his realm, man. Miami for Lewis. It's like no holds barred. I think he went full throttle on that one.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he sent it. Alfa Romeo, Valtteri Bottas. I always get grief on how I pronounce his name.
Yeah, rightfully so.
I know. Yeah, I should get grief for that. After all these years, Valtteri Bottas, P13, Zhou Guanyu, P16. A little surprised here, Paul, I don't mind telling you, I'm a little surprised. I thought the team looked better this weekend, and I thought they were going to have a better result than they did.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen despite the good start. Valtteri boxed early. This left him in traffic. It made life tough for him. He became the DRS train conductor at that point, and had no DRS to help him get down the track. And everybody behind him was like, this is the truly train. Get out of the way. Yeah, tough race for him.
Yeah, it is tough. I said,
and he looked good on Friday and Saturday.
He did, but the evolution of the track can really, really catch you out, especially on a street circuit, which doesn't have a lot of running on. There's no predictability to it. So, and what other people are doing in those practice sessions is different. So I think it may be a combination of other people doing something different and the track evolution suiting his car. So, at that point, anyway.
Yeah, right. Joe echoed my sentiment that they did much better this weekend for qualifying, but couldn't carry that pace into the race, is what he said. So you and me and Joe, we're like this. Joe,
sure are. You're much better at pronouncing his name too. So
yes, I am. Joe Guan Yu. I got that one down. Valtteri Bottas. I don't know what's his name.
I've got a half calf, deep calf for Bottas. Yes, that's me.
Yeah, yes, it's just Valtteri. It's fine. So he struggled to break the DRS train effect, and even though he was on the preferred race strategy, he wasn't able to really make it work from that point. So he finished a lowly P16. Let's see. Shall we talk about Williams? Let's do it. That is, I know everybody says that's the Wilhelm screen, but it's actually not. That's the Wilhelm scream.
I can't hear a scream. Sorry.
Oh, you didn't hear that?
Must be your internet didn't come all the way through. Didn't allow screaming.
Did you hear that scream?
I just heard a very.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, everybody's listened to me hit scream 1,000 times on the podcast. I hope it comes through. Oh, well,
it doesn't come through to me, but everyone else is they just hear constant screaming.
I'm going to admit to everybody, after the internet was turned off, I did not restart my computer. So, thank you for calling Dell support. Have you turned your computer off and back on? No, I did not.
God, mind blowing. Try that.
It is definitely an ID10T error on my part. Okay, so Williams, Alex Albon, P14, Logan Sargent, P20. Logan didn't have the best home race. He suffered damage early on, boxed early for a new wing, wasn't able to make much progress from there. Logan was very down on himself for his error. He apologized to the team. Felt better on the hards, though. He said on the final stint, he was able to march himself all the way up to last place.
Did you know he grew up like 15 miles away from there? Did you ever hear about that? Yeah.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Do you also know that, at Miami, in the actual stadium, there can be no wind, and other parts of the track, there can be wind.
That's crazy.
Did you know that? Yeah. It's stifling hot in the stadium. Heard that like 1,000 times over the weekend. Let's see. Alex was holding off Lewis early on, believe it or not, after several laps, holding the 7-time world champion. Said that he entered the race weekend thinking that they'd be the 9th quickest car. And to be honest with you, he may have been from that point. Alex questioned the team's call to push the hards as much as they did early on when he got the hards on there, and the team was saying to get Bottas, that's what you're going to need to do. He questioned that, but in the end, he was about a second and a half behind Bottas. So maybe the team was right on that one. I don't know.
Yeah, and that was the Bottas train, right? So
yeah, it was.
He'd have been ahead of that whole thing. So they probably were right.
They probably were. Although he probably didn't like what he was feeling, thought he was going to be left hung out to dry on worn tires. But, that James Vowell knows what he's talking about over there.
Sure does.
Yeah, that seasoned, grizzled veteran James Vowell may want to listen to him next time. This just in, Paul. Good grief. Another internet severing of the internet. It's terrible.
There's a guy back there going,
He's going, yeah.
Huh.
Wait a minute.
Oh, sorry, wrong one. Sorry.
This is an RG59 connector. That's really old. That should have an RG6 quad shield. It's like, no, we're not on cable. Please stop. All right. So let's talk about McLaren finally Lando Norris P17, Oscar Piastri P19. I'm going to go through the rest of this in fear of having my interwebs cut off again. Lando got hit from Nick from behind, as I mentioned. It went wide, dropped him backwards. That was pretty much the end of his strategy. They did gamble on running both cars on soft compounds at the beginning. So that strategy didn't really work. They ended up boxing early to change. I'm assuming maybe they thought that they could get a jump on some people, or they would have worked that strategy out. Oscar, by the way, Paul, had a brake-by-wire failure early on, said he was managing a lot of issues on the car during the race, so finishing down P17, P19. A banner weekend for McLaren.
Yeah, banner weekend. Yeah, it was a big weekend. Zach had all his forces out there, his marketing team out there, had, the hoopla, giving people hot laps in McLarens, and maybe threw those soft tires on just to have a little short-time glory. I don't know, but they're just not good, and especially Piastri. Any brake problems on a street circuit? No, thank you.
Yeah, not interested.
Not interested.
Swipe left.
Yeah. Pit in. I mean, especially when you're trolling around at the back of the pack.
Yeah.
I don't even know why they actually kept the car on the track. But as I said, there was a lot of McLarenisms down there, with the symbolism, with the IndyCar team coming to
Alex
America, all that kind of
Palou
stuff.
down there,
Yeah. So there's a lot going on. So, a little embarrassing, I would say, the competitiveness, the lack of the entire team right now. They're definitely looking like also Rans and don't look like they're really gaining anything. I don't know.
Yeah, not good. All right, let's do some awards for my internet service provider cuts me off, shall we? Let's do the first one. Move of the race.
Seriously, Todd.
Seriously.
Okay. All right, seriously. All right, who'd you have move the race?
Well, I had JYS.
I had Jackie too.
I mean, I love Jackie all the time, but love him even more for the ferocious man he is. Ferocious little Scotsman just grabbing, going for it, and bringing Federer over to Martin. I think that was just hilarious, funny, and charming to that degree. But Jackie's the man. I'll tell you.
He is. He's the man. All right, should I do it? I'm doing it. Here's Ode to Jackie. My Ode to Jackie sequence. I haven't done it for a long time. Here we go.
Yeah.
Pretty remarkable. Very impressive.
That's pretty good for a dyslexic. I would not normally remember very much.
This looks like a bit of a hairy monster.
It's a great car.
Aerodynamics come in at any speed. Positive directional stability.
Ford, I think, have done such a good job on the Temple. It's been designed from the wheels up.
All in all, the car is very good on the road.
There you go. That's
Jackie the one time Jackie lied to me.
Yeah, on the Ford Tempo.
The Tempo.
He lied to us all.
He lied to us all. So,
yeah, he did.
Yeah.
It wasn't designed from the wheels up.
It wasn't even designed, I don't think.
I don't think it was designed.
Some 8-year-old child designed it.
It was just assembled.
Should have read the springs on that thing. That thing had more lean than politicians.
It was so tubby when you drove. It's like one of those Nissan Milanos or whatever those Muranos.
A real driver's car. Yeah, if the driver's blind and whatever. Yeah.
All right, let's do Donkey of the Race.
We'll do it live.
All right, Paul. Who's your donkey?
Well, I'm going to go with McLaren.
Yeah.
It was a pretty hopeless farce of a race for those guys, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a good shot. I'm going with Charles. No! Yeah.
Also, a little farcical.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Right. The good thing is he chose to hit the car at different ends because, keep the parts.
He did.
Supply still there. He didn't knock another nose off. So.
Yeah, right. They didn't have to go with 2 front wings.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a front and a rear, Equal opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's do Final Awards Drive of the Race.
Get down.
All right, Paul, Drive of the Race. Who'd you have?
I'm going with Max. I mean, he may have only got 1 point, but man, he was fighting out with the Mercedes and the Ferraris and fighting back and tooth and nail. I just loved his drive. His loved his ferociousness, and so
Yeah.
Max is my man.
I think Kevin had a great race. That's a great pick. It's a great pick. I'm going to go with Max. I think that was a hell of a run. I
He
think
did
the
fairly well.
stint on the hards, he had one goal. He had to dispatch all those drivers in front of him quickly. Could not let Perez get a substantial lead, right? And put in some blinding laps.
And what does Perez think when he keeps looking back and just keeps seeing Max just
I know.
edging up? It's got to be brutal mentally.
It's got to be tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mentally, it's got to be tough. I mean, he's got to be thinking, what am I going to do to beat this guy?
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, he's firing on all cylinders. All right, let's do a mailbag real quick.
You've got mail.
Miles asks, it sounds like they changed the regulations over the offseason to raise the cars to deal with porpoising. If that's true, it would reduce the ground effects on the cars. If this is why, is this why we're seeing more processional races this season, or is it just down to the tracks not really having passing opportunities and DRS allowing trains to develop?
Well, we
What
kind of
say
talked
you,
to that
Paul?
earlier.
We
well,
did.
we kind of talked that earlier. But
Yep.
it brings in the aerodynamics on top of the car in more, which are very affected by dirty air. So that does make it harder to follow. So harder to follow, harder to get close, harder to pass.
Yeah, exactly. I think the DRS thing is a Red Bull neutering process, but I don't think it's contributing to the dirty wash.
Doesn't
the
help
dirty
anything.
air. It doesn't help anything.
The car's just fast.
Yeah, it is fast. It's fast everywhere.
Yeah.
It's going to be fast everywhere. And they're like, I read an article this morning, and it was in the UK video. Fans already turned off by Red Bull domination. It was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna, let's do sprint races, sprint qualifying, reduce DRS. We got to do anything. Please, it's like, my precious, you gotta protect the drive to survive fans. We don't want to lose them. It's like you just came off 8 years of sheer bloody domination by Mercedes. Can you give Red Bull a year or two? Can you? And I'm a Ferrari fan over saying, my gosh, when will Ferrari have its moment? But I hate it when they do stuff like that. It's just it drives me nuts. So anyway, all right, good question, Miles.
Anyway,
all right,
yeah.
That does it for this podcast before my interweb provider cuts me off again for the third time thrice. But Paul, thanks for coming on and reviewing the Miami Grand Prix.
You're welcome. Yeah.
As always, really appreciate it. Best of luck at Laguna. For those of you that want to watch racing this weekend, you can go on NBC. And I would imagine your friend, Calvin Fish, will be making the call.
Should be.
Over there at Laguna, along with our friend, right?
Who's our friend?
Lee Diffie?
Oh, yeah, Lee.
Yeah.
Does he call the IMSA races?
Yeah, I think he
I
does.
guess he does.
With
Okay.
Cal? I think he
Probably.
does.
Yeah, it's hard for me to see. I'm in the pit late. I don't
Yeah,
hear
you're
very
working.
much, but
Yeah, whatever, Cal.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I guess
anyway,
Lee's does it when it's not an IndyCar race.
not
Right?
any car race, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Lee's a good guy. So anyway, check that out this weekend. Watch the number 23 and 27.
Yes, sir.
Part of Racing Aston Martins. You'll see Paul there. If you're going to the race, make sure to go down the pit, stop by the Heart of Racing, give a shout out to Paul. He'll show you the car.
Yep.
He may do the royal wave.
Yep. Feel free to push Roman or Ross out of the way.
Yeah. Right. Push the drivers out of the way. You don't care about them. Yeah. It's going to get to the point where at the team, the drivers are standing around with like hero cards ready to sign. Everybody's coming in to see Paul. Let's make that a thing, folks.
That'd be funny.
Yeah, that would be funny. So anyway. All right. Well, next weekend I'll scare up Grace. We're going to get her opinions on all of this and more. We will, because that's what she's good at. Until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camper, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.